Welcome to Movers and Makers Virtual Chat Series, episode number 6, brought to you by Low Key Arts in Hot Springs National Park, Arkansas, and made possible with the generous support of the Gail Pratt Fraser Trust, to whom we extend our gratitude. I'm your host, Sonny Kay, Executive Director of Low Key Arts. My guest today is a Los Angeles-based artist manager and entrepreneur with more than 3 decades in the music business under her belt, not to mention a who's who of clientele, colleagues, and signings. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to the program Laurel Stearns. Laurel, thank you so much for agreeing to be on Movers and Makers today.
Oh, Sonny, thanks for having me on Low Key Arts. It's so good to be here.
Well, it's wonderful to have you. It's great to see you. It's been a little while, but
I know. Anytime I can sit and talk with a friend about interesting things, I'm down.
Well, good.
I could even sit with an enemy and talk about interesting things. It's fine.
Fair enough. Well, I will do my best, do my part to hopefully keep it interesting. I want to let you know that even though I've known you for many, many years, I did Google you in preparation for our chat today. And
I haven't done that. I need to Google myself.
Well, I'm happy to report that a search of your name returned 1,370,000 results.
What? Not about me.
I don't know. I think there's
only 100,000 about.
Okay. You're so modest.
That's wild.
So there's so much to talk about, and I think if it's okay with you, I'd love to just kind of start at the beginning and move briskly. But I think it's interesting to note that you are a California native, but you are from the unlikely origins of Palm Springs.
Yeah. So I do call myself a native. I was not born in Palm Springs. I was born on the East Coast. So there's a little bit of New England in my very, very, very far past. But at the age of 7 or 8, I moved to Palm Springs, which, is like a place at that point for the newlywed and the nearly dead. It wasn't cool. There was no like, hey, Coachella's here.
Right.
No. It was a place where people went to hide. A lot of celebrities went to hide. People, it had a deep, deep history of, there were nudists that moved there in the 1930s that were from Germany. And they were living in the canyon nude. And I believe some people discovered them and thought they were spies from Germany, because that was before World War II. And
that's incredible.
Yeah, there's some deep history to that place. It's a magical place. And, it taught me to search, because things weren't readily available. I didn't have like big record stores, and I didn't have exposure, I guess I should say, to say if I'd grown up in Los Angeles, where everything is here and you get exposed to all these things. My exposure path was unique to me. It was different, definitely.
And so how old were you when you started making those? I think you've mentioned in the past hitchhiking as a teen in LA. Is that right? Or am I embellishing?
No, it's true. So when I was a young kid, we would go every Thanksgiving. We would visit my aunt and uncles in the Boston area, and I had 3 cousins that were a lot older than me, and they had great taste in music, thankfully. And WBCN at the time were playing things like the Talking Heads and Crass, and I think I heard the Vibrators on there. Like, it was like a crazy mishmash of music, and they shared this music with me. I remember seeing Talking Heads vinyl on the floor. Like, these were my first moments of exposure, and I was like, what is this? I gotta find it. And again, like the level of interest was so high. I started putting pieces together, bit by bit. I started finding like fanzines that I could like go to the back page and, Maximum Rock and Roll. You could order every fanzine from everywhere, like just mailing out dollar bills all over the world to get my fanzine for $1. Right. And, it became like this, like, I was tireless finding these outlets of different culture, growing up in a place where it was like golf courses and tennis courts and like bright white outfits, crisp, clean tennis outfit, Fila and Reebok. I was like, I have zero interest in this. I want to go into this like crazy dark cave where, you know, alien sex fiend lives. And basically, I started finding so many things that way, and I would hang out with a lot of older kids. There was a very small group of us. You know, there was like one skinhead, one mod, a couple punk rockers,
All right,
a couple goths. You know, there was like a sort of like a baker's dozen of us people, and
this was at the high school in Palm Springs.
well, this was, I mean, I started getting, I think you have a picture of it. Like that was when I was 14. Yeah.
So this picture, I believe, is what we're talking about.
I was 14 in that photo. I looked like that. I would say, God, I started changing and evolving probably around the age of 12. And I actually saw a Black Flag show at a place called Rumors at a disco in Palm Springs because Black Flag played everywhere.
Yeah.
They played everywhere. They came to Rumors, they destroyed it. Then they came back to this JC Hall and they played with like JFA and Battalion of Saints. I think, no, maybe not. I can't remember. I have the flyer. And it was, I just knew that was my path. So I would hitchhike with the older kids to go to LA. I went to like the Cafe de Grand. I went to the Olympic shows. I remember just, I'm kind of surprised I'm still here.
Yeah, I mean, those things are legendary. I mean, those were enormous shows. Like we're talking 5,000 people.
They were giant. And I mean, you'd have a bill that was like Broken Bones and, you know, the Addicts. And then like, it would just be like this 10 other bands. I mean, it's so crazy what they would do, what Golden Voice did, which, you know, Golden Voice definitely, my relationship to them emotionally is just, it's huge. They were the first foray into like a live show. Besides the generator parties that we would put on in Palm Springs as kids, we were always putting together like DIY kegger generator parties out in the middle of nowhere.
Now, does that relate to the Desolation Center film at all, and that scene with you familiar with what I'm talking about?
I'm not.
It's Stuart Sweezy's film. He's made a documentary about Sonic Youth playing out there and the Minutemen and stuff.
Okay, so there were a few different shows that happened. Like Fugazi had played out there. That I went to that show. That was way later when I was an adult living in Los Angeles. I'm not sure. I remember like SWA doing one. Okay. They were, I don't know about that Sonic Youth show. And it might have been after I left. I think it probably was because I moved out of Palm Springs at the age of 18 and or a little earlier, 17. And yeah, I think I might have missed that. So whatever, you know, whatever that was, I'll have to go look it up. Now I'm curious.
I mean, he was instrumental in the Amok store, if you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure you have many paths in common.
I mean, that was also like one of those mythical places in Los Angeles, you know, where that's where cool stuff is.
Yeah.
You can't really tell that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, Los Angeles just changes it seems to change so quickly these days. I'm not there very often, but every time I'm back, it's noticeably different.
We miss you.
I miss you too. So one thing that never seemed to be much of a priority to you was actually taking the dive and you know, trying your hand at music, unless I'm mistaken, right?
Well, you know, when I looked like that photo, I did. So I was in 2 bands as a kid. Yeah.
How did I not know this?
Well, I was in Velvet Cross. I was the front person. I will send you the Maximum Rock and Roll article. That was that I found. Yeah. Actually, Fredo was our drummer, and he was the original drummer of Caius and Queens of the Stone Age. So
Fredo, who played with the Beastie Boys.
Not that Fredo. That's a different Fredo.
Okay. Right.
That's No, this is Fredo, who is just a trap set fat-ass drummer.
Don't know if I heard. Yeah.
He's great, Fredo. And he was our drummer. And we had a couple shows. I was like, get me off stage. I do not want to be the center of attention. I want to like be behind the stage
How interesting.
having purpose, but not on the stage. And so, give me something to do. Like, we made fanzines. We would put these shows together. Like, give me a responsibility, but not the responsibility of holding a mic. So yeah, that band was called Velvet Cross, and we had our one article, and they said I sounded like polystyrene. I'm like, cool, I'm good.
That wasn't your intention.
No, that was it though. I'll take it.
Wow, fair enough. That's great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So clearly, I mean, the one of the key components of the punk ideal is DIY, is do it yourself, and so it doesn't seem like much time passed before you really took the initiative and started doing that and involving yourself in the business end of things. Yeah.
I mean, I am not good at doing things I don't want to do, which is, I guess you could call that a punk ethic. Some people say like, you should get married and you should have this and that, and like all that sort of like, 1950, whatever, that time, a very long time ago. And then now even, you should, work at all these different like tech, companies. So you have, your resume looks incredible. Like you should work at Spotify and then Facebook and then, jump around and get all this experience. I have always been someone who's like, if I'm going to do something, I have to love it, because my level of, if I'm really interested in something and passionate about something, I can just go. I'm tireless. Like it's like, I'll get it. I'll do it until I drop. And that's something that like has always been really easy for me to follow that ethos. And I would say it for any young person who's like, what do I like, listen to that inner voice and figure out what you really want to apply yourself to. Because once you get that lined up, if you're lucky enough to like actually like kind of be able to go into that space and figure out what you want to do it, because life can be very long or it can be awesomely short. So
what was your first music job?
So my first music job was actually like getting paid. I was an editor at a Hollywood, Los Angeles magazine called Rock City News. And it was literally like, it was run by a guy named Ruben Blue, who was such a stoner, but had a vision. And I mean, the magazine was like, our distribution was getting bigger. It was in like the tens of thousands. And, the people who were paying for ads were like a lot of the hair bands at the time. That was like a very popular
So was it like BAM or something?
Kinda. Yeah. It was like BAM.
For LA.
Yes.
Even though you could kind of get BAM in LA, I guess, too. But
you could. It was a lot. It was that size, same size.
Oh, okay.
And I went out and wrote articles, and then I would, we would edit the paper. I did interviews. Like I interviewed everyone from Joey Ramone to Shel Talmy it was crazy.
Amazing.
Yeah. Wow. And I actually have my Joey Ramone cassette recording.
Oh, how cool.
I had a very small lexicon at that time. I was like, what is wrong with me? All I said was great the whole time. Anyway, I was also a teenager. I dropped out of Parsons. I was going to college.
I meant to ask you about that. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. Yeah. Do you have formalities of any kind? I mean, no. You certainly have you have a number of degrees from the School of Hard Knocks, I guess you could say, but
yes.
nothing. So you were at Parsons, but not.
I was at Parsons, and I dropped out during the foundation year because I knew that I was living really close to it, which was downtown at that time near MacArthur Park, which was terrifying at that moment in time. It was so dangerous, and I was going to shows at Scream, which is at the Park Plaza, and they're, adjacent to where there are like dead bodies in the MacArthur Park Lake. Like it was so dangerous, but so exciting. And I just found that like my attention was going to the after party after the show, then the after party after the show. And I was like going into class in the same outfit that I was wearing the night before. And I was just like, I was wasting my dad's money and my time on something that wasn't my main priority. As a teenager, I was like, I'm this is not my thing, even though I loved learning about art and learning how to create art. Fine art was my major. I realized like, this is not, I am a social person, and being a fine artist is a very solitary thing for the most part.
It certainly is. Yeah. You were a painter, or you were
Yeah.
trying into different things. Okay. But you were
I loved painting.
Yeah. And you picked it up again years later and have indeed had gallery shows. And
yeah, a few of them, like, had fun. I mean, I definitely like had some like fun little moments of like art being shown, and you know, it was sweet. And I if I want to do it, I can do it. But
absolutely.
Yeah, that doesn't go away. I mean, if I'd been painting this whole time, I'd probably be a much better painter, but it's okay. I can appreciate it, and I support a lot of the arts and buy art, and you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Now, you by this point were living in Los Angeles. Do you mind? Forgive me for asking a personal question, but did you go as a teen? Did you kind of go through a partying, rebellious phase? You've always been such a sober presence.
Oh wow!
And a very quite often an island of serenity in a maelstrom. I've seen you in that situation many, many, many times.
Yeah.
All kinds of venues. You have a very zen quality to you that I don't know how long it's always, if it's been there always.
Thank you. I think so. I got my partying out of my system by the age of around 19, 20.
Okay.
Or 19 or 20. Like, I was a pretty hardcore partier in the desert.
Okay.
And yeah, like everything, like, and lots of it. And so I think by the time I turned 20 and I was in Los Angeles, I was actually doing some kind of illegal activity in Los Angeles as a teen with controlled substances. I decided I'm either going to die or go to jail, and I don't want to do either one of those. So I stopped, doing what I was doing. And, I would drink wine and kind of be in the wine zone for like, I think I carried that on till I was about 40. And then I haven't done I stopped everything. I drink tea, I drink water, and I'm totally content. I think I just got it out of my system.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I think I literally kind of cracked my head open as much as I needed and got certain perspectives and I'm happy that I went through that time period.
Sure.
At that age.
I don't get the impression that your parents constricted you very dramatically.
They were never around. Like, I was beyond a latchkey kid. And it was, I don't remember ever having any authority whatsoever. Wow. I've never had someone say, you can't do that, which in some ways is great, where, I'm like, oh, I learned how to be totally independent and form my own yeses and nos. On the other hand, there are times where I'm like, oh, I never had like these authority figures and certain aspects of, life where, I don't know, I guess ultimately it's a good thing. It didn't, I didn't have a whole lot of fear instilled in me as a youth. Like, I was just like, let's go, let's do this. There wasn't like, oh, we shouldn't, because, which is early imprinting from someone telling you yes, no, know. I do remember having a Christian stepmom at one point, and she told us, oh my God, I'll never forget, we're Jews from the East Coast. We were driving in a car and she told my brother and I that if we didn't become Christians, that if the rapture came, her and her son would rise up out of this car and we would smash into the wall because the rapture would take us. And as a 9-year-old,
in the painting actually with the freeway and everything, beware.
9 years old, hearing that we're going to smash into the wall if we don't pray in Jesus' name, I was like, cool. I don't believe in any of this. So I made my decision really early on that I wasn't really into like dogma and any of that world. Not that interesting.
Yeah. That's well. So by the time you and I met roughly around 1999, 2000, I was moving back to Los Angeles from living around the Western U.S. for quite a while. And at that point, I think you had just begun working at Capitol Records.
Yeah, we didn't meet earlier. I thought we did.
Well, I guess I take that back. We did. We met, I think, at Jabberjaw a couple of years. I guess we got to know each other well once I moved to LA, but we had met right years prior to that. Well, let's back up a little bit. I guess before Capitol Records, who was actually the first band that you managed?
Oh yeah. So after the Rock City News moment, basically, like I was like, all right, I don't know, this is a weird world, and my boss is like such a stoner, and I was like, I want to be around someone that I can learn from, and I didn't really feel that there. So I started working at a recording studio, and the recording studio was, unbeknownst to me, a very famous studio called Cherokee, where so many records were made. And it was I was just thrown into this world of, oh, wow, okay, I'm helping, David Bowie with Tin Machine, like getting whatever he needed, or Ozzy, or Rod Stewart, or the Pixies, or Booyah Tribe. Like it was endless. And I was meeting all these people, I think I was 19 at that point, and 19 and a half. And I literally, like, the Jimmy Iovine's, the Trevor Horns, I was meeting everybody. Like, the most heightened environment is a recording studio for the most part, because of the fact that all their egos are out. Everyone's in a safe place for the most part. There's no public. It's just a very, like, specific, raw environment, and everyone's creating, and they're vulnerable, and there's so many ideas going on, and so much weighing on what happens with this record. And I learned, it gave me such a great perspective on how important making the right record is, which would later lend to my career path, 10 years later, which I wasn't psychic. I didn't know. I actually never really had, like, here's my goal, which was probably one of the things that, because I had such a lack of supervision and parenting, there was never anyone saying you should form goals.
Right.
Form a thing. No one ever said that. I was like, I don't have a goal. I just know what I like, and I want to do that. So luckily I picked something that actually you can have a great career in, which was music. And so I'm in the studio, I'm learning so much about making a record, learning how to interact with these wild personalities, which I fit right into. They're like wild, crazy person from the desert. So I was like,
and what were you doing? You were assisting engineers?
I was assisting the manager of the studio.
Okay.
So I was Susan Donaldson's assistant, and sometimes I would be in the studio, sometimes I would be like helping outside, like whatever was needed.
Right.
Sometimes I'd be like, Rod Stewart, you have to sign this work order, and he'd sign it with like a penis. It was great, like just weird shit.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
Amazing.
Anyway. And I brought that up to him recently, like maybe about a year and a half ago. I ran into him and I was like, do you remember? And he's like, shh. And anyway,
That's so embarrassing.
So
he should be ashamed of himself.
Probably
not the worst thing he's ever drawn.
A lot of champagne. So then I worked in a few different studios, and I liked it, but I realized, like, oh, I think I want more. I think I want to be, I want to do more than just like facilitating the record making process. And a gentleman named Dave Lumian brought me in to work for him. And his very small, it was just him. He managed bands, and he had an interesting past. He had an interesting perspective on music, and he took me under his wing and sort of like showed me the ropes in the management world. And we started working with the Descendents. We started working with we started working with GWAR. I had a few there was a group called the Watts Prophets, who I loved being able to work with them and learn from them, because they taught me so much about the civil rights movement. And, they were the last poets of the West Coast. They were involved in a lot of things that, I didn't know that much about, and they taught me a lot. And they were also very integrated in the jazz scene. So I got to meet so many incredible people like Don Cherry and Horace Tapscott and all these crazy people through them. And they were very tight with the Marley family. So we flew to Old Kingston so they could perform for Bob's birthday. And
incredible. Wow.
Yeah, I like went to this insane compound that Bob grew up in. Rita flew us out. So Amdi, one of the prophets who's still alive, he eulogized at Marley's funeral. So yeah. And it was like, I just learned a lot from like working with people with that much like intention,
Right.
It was great. I loved it.
So, the manager's name was Dave. What did you say?
Lumian. We used to call him Dave Clumian. Yeah, Dave, I think, left the business.
I've never heard his name.
Yeah, he left the business as far as I know. I have not talked to him in I don't even know how long. And while I was working with him, I was always out, always going to shows, always at every like right show. So a lot of these like record execs kept seeing me at these shows, all these people. And they're like, I had lots of different people ask me like, do you want to be a scout? Do you want to be a scout? Because they just saw me everywhere. And
it was starting to pay off, you could say.
Yeah, I was already working. Like I was getting paid to be a manager and bringing in bands and, working on like to all the bands we worked on, they were touring bands. So, and the records we made were with them it was so much fun to like work with the Descendents who, that was my childhood hero band. I mean, I could not believe that I got to be involved with Everything Sucks. Like that was a moment in time that I was like, I don't even understand. My name is on this record. And as a child, Milo Goes to College was like, I just stared at that record. and
incredible.
Yeah, and it was very surreal. And I'll never forget, I remember like Matt Groening was a big fan of, this is just a theory. I'm kind of making this up, but my theory was, so I was at one point dating John Kay, who invented Ren and Stimpy. I knew John was friendly with Matt Groening, and he connected me with him. And I asked Matt if he would like do something with the Descendents. This is part of management, like come up with creative ideas. How do you expand the vision? How do you connect it? It's like, no, you don't want to just stay in this little bubble of the people that, your echo chamber, grow it. Right. So I was like, okay, the Simpsons are like massive. And he declined. And I was very sad because I knew how much he loved them. And he had written about them when he used to write for the LA Reader back in the day. Like Matt Groening wrote about the Descendents all the time.
Wow. Why did he decline?
I had this moment where I was like, did you get, like, I looked at Milo and I look at Bart Simpson and I was like, they kind of look alike.
Wow. I wonder. That's you may be
I'm making that up, but I feel like there's something there.
That's an interesting theory. That is surprising though, because that band seems of almost religious significance to people.
They were my religion, and I could have stopped there and been like, cool, I'm good. But working with people like GWAR and just being in that space of like watching these communities build, even watching like the Warped Tour build around, like the Descendents were on an early, if not almost the first Warped Tour, and seeing what at one point was like this outsider moment become mainstream,
right,
was always like, for me, it's not about, I don't want someone to, as a manager or someone who like helps project art, an artist. I'm not an artist, but I do have a vision. I want to see it project out. I mean, why make this incredible record, this amazing thing, and wave a flag in a cave?
Right.
Like, why would you want to limit the exposure? It's all about how you expose it. If you do things in a way that is elegant and non-embarrassing, the art should reach all people. You should not try and curate your audience. That doesn't make any
Mhm.
sense. So, I'm all for, finding the right paths so people can connect to it, because I know how much it did for me in the
Right.
desert.
Right.
So,
And I think one thing that is, I don't know if it's necessarily unique. I mean, I think it differentiates you in the management world, at least for amongst some of the people who I've known who can't appreciate the difference between sort of uh, uh, what flies on a mainstream level and what needs to stay, what kind of things you don't, what
right,
kind of things are not broken and you don't fix. If
right.
you know what I'm saying.
I do. I mean, I guess it has to be the right things, if like when it comes to like if something doesn't really have any place in being in a commercial space, well then don't force it to be, and don't be surprised if it's not. And that's like some people, they might envision like, oh, I should have more fame, I should have more this, that, and I'm like, well, look at what you're making, and let's be real. When I made the jump to a major label, because I at one point I finally was like, you know what, all these people have asked me about becoming an A&R person. And I became a scout for a while at Sony, at the Sony work group, which was an amazing label. Like it was just like endless vision, incredible creatives there. I was like, wow, this Jeff Aroff and Jordan Harris and David Field and all these people who are like, their works, the people who have worked with so many incredible groups, I got to like learn from and see what they were doing, with the artists that they worked with. And I was like, okay, I really want to do this now. Like I kind of got the perspective of it, because at first I had that feeling too, where I'm like, this stuff's sacred.
Right.
We can't turn it into Mickey D's, like I had that punk rock attitude as well as a kid, which is why I was a manager at first and working with groups that were specifically touring groups. As a touring band, there's radio isn't really an aspect of it when you're like a hardcore touring band, and that's your, like it wasn't about focusing on singles and radio play. Like that was not, those were not the artists that I was working with.
Right.
But once I like realized, like, I was like, okay, so I'm taking a leap. I got a job at Capitol Records, and when you look around what's going on inside a major label system and what major labels do, and for anyone to like diss on a major label because they got dropped or this, major labels amplify popular culture. Let's be real. Like that's what they do.
Yeah.
They take something that's there and they blow it up. Something that's already happening, something that's already kind of growing and evolving into what popular culture consumes. And to be mad at, to think that it's going to be okay to be niche and that doesn't work on a major label. And so now even more so. And there were times where some label execs would take a chance and they would have their like Captain Beefhearts, and they would do those things that were a little left, but labels aren't like that really anymore. There aren't any niche pet projects going on in major label land. And there's no diss. It's all respect, because this is what, if you walk into a Japanese restaurant, you don't ask for a burrito. So, that doesn't exist here. So it's like, know the restaurant you're eating at. And basically that's the thing. When you commit to something, like really know the environment and do your homework first before you get into like working with certain people and their perspectives, and finding those alignments within people is also really important. I was never very political, and this business is very political. Most businesses are, and I just really enjoyed creating with whoever was around. But as time goes on, you kind of see who's doing what and how they do it. And it's always a good thing to align with people that have a similar ethos,
Speaking of which, if you don't mind me asking, who were some of your kind of successes at Capitol during your time there?
Yeah. So I had a lot of fun there. I was, a gentleman named Ron Lafitte, and there was the original person who hired me, Perry Watts Russell. they pretty much let me be me. Because I was very lucky at that moment in time. The music that I was around was popular. It wasn't like I was, having to like run around and like sign something that I didn't like. So I was right in the middle of it. And especially in New York, I was right in that whole scene of like Interpol and the Yeah Yeah Yeahs were exploding, and DFA and Fisher Spooner, which was one of my signings. I did spend a very long time courting Interpol to come to Capitol. And after 7 years, they did come to Capitol. And then right as they had released the record, there was a merger and 250 of us were all let go. And so wow. I ended up going back into management. Ron Lafitte and I went to Red Light. So we opened up the West Coast offices of Corin Capshaw's empire. And, but yeah, it was unfortunate, but in the Capitol realm, like I got to make, a couple records with the Decemberists, who I still am very close to. Chris Funk, who's brilliant. Oh, and I just talked to him today.
By way of illustration?
What's that?
I said by way of illustration. I don't mean to.
Yes, that's okay. They were like, when I had to describe them, to everybody, I was like, well, they're like an American Fairport convention, Huh. And yeah, and Fisher Spooner, sharing what they were like when I was like making my pitch. I was like, it's kind of like Cats meets New Order. And Interpol, it wasn't hard to explain Interpol, obviously. And James Murphy, I had made a record with him. I had him produce this band called Automato very, very early on, and then brought in the LCD Soundsystem early recordings. The Daft Punk is playing in my house, just all of the LCD like original hits, and was started to spread that around the company. And as time went on, the company signed them. I think that I was lucky. I got to do what I loved there. And I actually got to, there's so many A&R people that I've met that like have never signed anything. It's like, yeah, it's a strange thing. And there were some failures too. There were a couple.
Well, of course, but I mean, that's to be expected. Arguably the most iconic record label in the world, in that building. I mean, how often did you find, were you just sitting there pinching yourself going, is this real? You could go downstairs, you get the elevator downstairs and browse the Beatles masters, right?
Well, I mean, the thing that was so odd about that, just being there, like, Sonny, all of this stuff just feels really second nature. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be here. This is where music is. Not that I'm entitled, but I just felt like it was like, this is where I'm supposed to be, and it's not an ego thing. It's not any of that. It just felt very comfortable. So I had a meeting in there with Michael Jackson. There's so many moments, but the one moment that I would say that really like blew my mind, and I think I wasn't even working there anymore. I've spent about 10 years there almost. This movie called The Wrecking Crew was created. It's a documentary about the Wrecking Crew. And someone saw the movie, a screening, and then texted me and was like, dude, you're in this movie. And I'm all, how am I in that movie? Those people are like 70 something years. I was like, I can't be in that movie. Like, I'm not that generation. I wish, but like, and I went to see the movie. A director's was present. The director was present. And I'm watching the film and I'm like, I'm so curious what this is. Of course I want to see the movie anyway. I would have seen it and discovered this moment anyway. And I'm looking at a scene of the Capitol Records building, the front door, and I'm walking into work. I'm wearing the worst outfit ever. Like there were just days where I'm just like, I don't even care. House coat. Yeah. Like, I was like, I'm in this movie. This is crazy. And that was like the moment where I was like, what an honor, to be in this building. Yeah. And to be, yes, sitting at Nat King Cole's piano and looking at mics that say Frank on them. And, but being in Palm Springs, like Frank was hanging out with my dad all the time. It was crazy. So even some of that stuff from the desert, like my dad was hanging out with a lot of those people that were hiding in the desert to not be around paparazzi, like Frank or Barry Gibb or Kirk Douglas, or, pick a celebrity. They all went, Sonny Bono, they all went there to like just hide out. And so I never really had moments of like, oh my God, you're famous. I'm like, oh yeah, this just reminds me of my childhood. I'm like, cool. You colorful people are everywhere. It's awesome. I want to be around colorful people. So yeah, I think that moment was the moment where I had a serious like gratitude. Definitely.
And then from Capital, you say you were at Capital for about 10 years.
Yeah,
So,
almost. A little under.
Right around 2010 or so is when you left to form Red Light on the
Well,
West
yeah,
Coast?
actually, it was around 2009. Like I went to Capital in 1999.
Did
So
you?
yeah, so the Red Light offices were opened in 2008. So yeah, 9 years Capital, then 2008 Red Light, and that was, I mean, I had not been in a management, sort of role in a while, and
So let me interrupt you for a second. While you were working A&R at Capital, A&R, of course, being artist and repertoire. I don't know if we've mentioned that or not. That's just a foregone conclusion.
yeah.
While you were doing that, you had sort of hung up your kind of freelance hat as a manager.
Well, I mean, I was never freelance. I was working with Dave.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I wasn't. I mean, I was his employee. So yeah, so we had interns, and I was the employee. And yeah, so I from the management, and then into major label land, and then back to management. And this company, Red Light, was already very successful with like Dave Matthews and Fish and all these jam bands, and I was kind of like this indie alternative person coming into this company, and I came in with the Decemberists, which you could say they were like an alternative indie band that were on a major, but brought them in, and it was sort of like it was the first band of their nature to join that company. So it started to shift. It wasn't just the Fish, Dave Matthews thing. Right. And Korn started adding all these people to the West Coast office. He actually took a lot of the heads of the departments from Capital. And he built that team was incredible. We were killing it. When we all got let go, like this was like the winning team. It was it was a mind melt, because I was like, but we're the ones with like all these records on the charts, and we're the ones getting canned, which just leads to the whole thing of politics.
Right.
That president that got appointed, because they booted the other president, brought in his team. That was it. And none of us were his team. So
change of administration.
Big time. That was basically it. So yeah, we we opened up those offices, and the rest is history. That place is booming. I mean, I think they had layoffs during COVID, but I went back into management, and I'm still in it.
And you've been now with a firm called Primary Wave for about 7 or 8 years.
It's been since 2012, and I am basically, I have this interesting relationship with them. Like, I am a manager there, but they've started plugging me during COVID. They started plugging me into some more interesting creative realms. Like I'm working on a Leon Russell tribute, and because Primary Wave is also a publishing company, and they're, the backbone is the House of Legends. I mean, they publish everyone from Bob Marley to Smokey Robinson to Stevie Nicks to, I mean, the list is really long. Wow. And Leon Russell is one of them, and I am a massive Leon fan. So we're going to have a really cool contemporary tribute to him probably next year.
All right. Wow.
Yeah. Excited about that. Totally. And COVID, if I was like still like working on tours right now, I don't know that I could do that, because my artists, I would need to spend that time on that area. But because there aren't any tours, the space opened up. And basically, I was able to work on this and some other creative things within the primary wave realm, as well as team up with this amazing group of tech rock stars for the streaming platform, which, like what we're on now.
Right. Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Really,
That is called
in live.
In Live.
Mm-hmm.
And it is it's something on par with Zoom or StreamYard kind of thing.
It's a deeper thing than that. I mean, the tech is, it is definitely, StreamYard, we use StreamYard when we want to pull in like the VIP guests.
Okay.
We actually do work with this in the platform to help, basically support that part of a stream when we have VIPs or whomever we're going to pull on. We would pull them on like this. But the group of people, they were working on this platform long before COVID, and it wasn't a reaction. It wasn't like capitalizing on this horrific moment. And basically, was, they saw the future, because when I first, they had asked me to speak on a panel. That's how I met them. It was like a launch panel, and I was on a panel with like Jody Stevens and Keith Shockley and this crazy scene of people kind of old guard, like deep listening people. And they basically brought me on to do this panel. Afterward, the CEO, Calvin Louis, asked if I wanted to join their team. And I was like, yeah, I can definitely be on the advisory biz dev team. And, I believe in this. I believe that this world that we're in, the streaming world, was going to happen anyway. Yeah. But the pandemic just fast tracked it. Yeah, so we would be doing this stuff like 5 years from now, we would have been here. Right. So we basically just, pivoted, moved really quickly, moved into this space. And I'm not mad at it. I mean, there are a lot of my friends that are in the music business that are just like kind of stoked on the break. I was like, yeah. I mean, traveling, all of that is really hard on the body and the earth and like everything. And so being able to take a little break, reprioritize, figure out what you need to do, how you need to do it. It's really given us that. And I'm like, this is cool. And it's brought these different opportunities. I mean, I love, the work we're doing with people. Like, we just did this really cool partnership with Spin Magazine, and we're going to power all of their streaming efforts. And we just did this shoot with Rico Nasty, which was amazing. Like the shoot was, we turned it into a variety show, and we were pulling her fans on the stream, and some of the fans, because we would pull them, basically we would pull, and they couldn't believe it. They're like, no way, is this a scam? And it's like, no, you're like on the stream now. and, cool. And yeah, it's like, this is like, you couldn't do that at a live show. Right. You're not pulling people up on a stage. It's like that connection of having that moment. Like we've done selfies with people, you just do a screenshot and then we'll have the artist sign it, send it out to the person. And there are so many different ways to utilize this. It is not a replacement. It is something that we get to get creative with. And yeah, of course, you doing a show with a guitar in your house. Okay. I mean, yeah, if the songs are great, cool. It's going to be nice. But it's all about the artist and their teams coming up with compelling ways to create. So I know it's like, oh, this is stressful. It's a whole new thing. It's like, yeah, but let that push you, like let that, this isn't the end. This is the beginning. So that's how I see it.
Let's talk about this, if you don't mind, for a moment. What's going on here?
Yeah. This is my favorite. So this is also another silver lining of COVID. So back in August, my friend, Sam Velde, he and I asked him, like, we were going to go on a walk and I had to move the time period. And he's like, I got to go to Watts. And I'm like, I want to go to Watts. So he brought me to Watts to Food Bank. And basically, I rolled up. It was like the sea of amazing creative people. Like it's very, it's like people from labels and people from bands and people, just like it's a thing. Like all these folks, a lot of them I knew.
At a food bank or
It's a food bank, and
okay.
it's inside of a rec center. Like that photo is inside the center.
Okay.
So there's like basketball courts, and it's a really cool place. And there's a lot, like the woman Tanya Dorsey, who started it. She started it at the beginning of COVID. This is not like some place that's perpetuating a welfare state. This is a place that is keeping people above water during this intense time, because if the schools are shut and they got to stay home from work to watch their kids, they ain't bringing home the money and the food. So basically the ecosystem there is fragile. And she basically rallied this whole moment where I think we feed upwards of around from 400 to 600 families a week. And yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot of packing Thursday nights and distro Friday mornings. And it's clockwork. It's just rolling. It's been rolling since March. And out of that, Scotty, who's in the picture with me there, works over at Capitol, my old haunting stomping ground. Scotty and I, he was like, I want to start this music program. And I'm like, he's like, are you in? And I'm like, I'm totally in. And we started Unity Gain Crew. And we have been basically sharing with the kids, and exposing them to other things other than like, who knows what might be in the streets of Watts in the projects. We want to give them new perspectives, things that are like, definitely just positive exposure.
So what form does this take? Is it a kind of a classroom situation or after school?
It's kind of a classroom thing. We do it once a week. We always have a guest. We've had so many people contribute, donate. Like Beats gave us all these headphones. We got like sampling machines from Teenage Engineering to teach the kids how to make beats.
Oh, how cool.
We've had my friend from Nike phone in and sent, AF1s to all the kids and talk about the intersection of the arts and Nike, things that the kids can. This week we have the 1500 Sound Academy, which is like a big deal. And there's like a lot of really great people. Vinyl Me Please was last week. We just have everybody coming in. At the minute you ask, they say yes. And we want to show like, these kids, like they just stream music on YouTube, maybe Spotify, and they don't know how that all gets there. They don't know what goes into that. So we want to show them all these jobs that are behind the stage. That's
incredible. So how many kids are in this program at any given time?
12. Yeah, it's a tight little crew, but they're so fun and funny.
That's amazing.
And their attention spans are really short. So anyone who's like doing, joining us, I'm like, they're like, how long is this like structured? I'm on, I'd say about 15 minutes and you're good. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
People's attention spans are, well, in general short, but when you're like 9 to 12.
Sure. They're really young kids, of course. Yeah.
Totally.
Wow.
Yeah.
In addition to all this, if you don't mind me mentioning it, you have a side gig. I mentioned that you're an entrepreneur, and it seems to be really taking on a life of its own, from what you've told me, and that's your antique jewelry.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Pass it on.
So I didn't think I would be talking about that, but yeah. So I mean, forever, and honestly, like a great piece of art, as we know, affects us viscerally. Whether it's a book, a movie, a song, and also an incredible piece of jewelry. These are works of art. Like, most of the things that I buy and sell some things are from the 70s. That's my cutoff point. But most of the pieces that I move on to their new, forever home, their new custodians, they're from the 1700s and the 1800s, and sometimes earlier. I mean, I have some ancient pieces, and I'm physically moved. I'm viscerally moved by these things. And I always have been since I was a kid, super intrigued by jewelry. And it just, I think about 7 years ago, I delved in like pretty deep, and I made a really big commitment to it. And yeah, I use Instagram. I friggin' love Instagram. I just post it. Someone DMs me, and then they get their new favorite forever heirloom. And it's these things they're high vibrational. I mean, jewelry's history is pretty intense. When you see, it's like it's saved people's lives, like going to a country with something hidden that was their currency. Like, it's the intention behind it is what I get into. Sure, there's you can look at uncut gems and go, oh my God. but
I imagine most jewelry has so much emotional,
so powerful,
so much emotion invested in it.
100%. It is a really charged thing. And honestly, like, it's the same as music. It's just a different medium. I get the same thing out of it when I see something I love. And like the music that I've aligned myself with throughout the years, a lot of more left of center, not the radio, popular groups.
Sure.
I'm the same way with jewelry. I'm buying things that are very specific, and they're not, the Cartier love bracelet, Yeah, it's, I mean, no offense. That's
right. Sure.
Fine. There's a reason it's omnipotent, but like I veer off. It's very similar to my musical connections. Totally.
I'm amazed that you have the time to do it, frankly, because in the time that I've lived in LA, spent a lot of time hanging out with you. Far and away, you're the hardest working person I know. I mean, I think, how many nights a week are you out these days?
None.
Wow. Well, things have changed.
Well, COVID.
Well, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, of course.
Yes, in the last year.
Stupid remark, but before that.
Normally, I still go out. Probably still 4 nights a week or something of that, 4 or 5 nights a week. Like, I'll be at a book signing, a gallery opening, a show if it's worth it, friends' dinners, friends' hangs, some weird esoteric spiritualist art thing, like whatever LA has to offer, which is a lot.
A lot.
It's a lot. Like, we're so lucky here. We get exposed to everything, and not everything, but a lot.
10 times over and then some.
Yeah, it's a hub, so people come through and they bring amazing things to experience, and I'm still super happy here. Roger and I live on a beautiful mountain in Los Angeles, Mount Washington, and I can't complain. You came here, you know what it looks like.
Your house is incredible. I look forward to coming back. And
psychedelic walls.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's you guys are living the life. I think it's fair to say.
I feel good. I feel like we're in a good place, and good to be up here on a mountain with coyotes and owls during this whole time. Definitely.
Got your spirit animals to keep the world out.
Yes. Yeah.
Is there anybody that you're working with now that you'd like to mention before we wind things down here?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. At the moment, my roster, I have so much love for all these people that I get to work with. I work with an amazing artist, US Girls, which AKA Meg Remy. Yep, that's Meg. She is a force. Her records come out through 480 Beggars worldwide, and I was introduced to her by Panache, the booking agency. And,
I know Michelle.
Yeah, and basically, she's just a very, very unique, special artist. Kaitlyn Aurelia Smith, who is a modular synth artist. She's also one of a kind, and lots of really interesting things happening with her, for her. Also a multidisciplinary, everyone I work with, for the most part, they have multiple skills. I mean, Meg did just write a book that's coming out in America in April. And, Kaitlyn is, she composes as well. Wow. I also work with another artist composer, which is the Album Leaf, Jimmy Laval. He's been doing a lot of composing, everything from the sound design for Beats headphones. Like he creates those tones. He's doing the next round right now, to scoring movies and TV shows. I still work with, for a long time now, 10 years, Red Fang, a hard rock band from
These guys.
the Northwest. Yeah, they're the best. They hardworking, hard touring. They're not touring right now, but we will have a new record out in June. So
All
keep
right.
your eyes peeled on that. And then I also work with a sub pop band called Moaning, and they're great. They're a trio out of Los Angeles.
There we go.
Great guys. Yeah, definitely. Like Sean is an incredible illustrator. He's been doing a lot of really interesting things lately. The most recent Run the Jewels video is his. He sold a show to HBO. He sold a show to Comedy Central, all animated shows.
Wow. Which one of them, Sean, the singer?
Yeah.
How interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and Jonathan Rice is also someone who's a multidisciplinary. He hasn't been doing that much in the music space right now, but he is writing a script that was already bought, and it will star Anne Hathaway. And he's in the middle of that right now. So, everyone's doing their thing.
You are always at the center of a hive of activity. I
love activity. I thrive off it. Definitely. Yeah.
Well, like I said, I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I say you have always been one of the hardest working people I know, and I don't think that's there's no evidence that that's going to change anytime soon.
I love what I do. It's that ethos from childhood. If I love it, I'm tireless. That's it. And if there's anything I could say to send off, it's like, just do what you love. Like, find what you love and do it. I don't know what that is for everybody, but everybody has something. There's something out there for everybody. You just have to figure out what it is.
Yeah. As my mom used to say, follow your bliss.
Yeah. And whatever that is. I mean, and look, if you're like a weed smoker, you can totally work in weed now. So it's like,
yes, apparently.
Yeah. So. I mean, I segued out of that when I was 18, but yeah. Totally.
Well, that's an excellent philosophy to live by, I think. And
thank you.
It's been so great talking to you, Laurel. I'm so grateful to you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Hope we get the chance to see each other again before too long.
Me too.
Good luck with all your endeavors. And I hope COVID, packs its bags soon and clears out, and you're able to get back to doing what you do so well.
Oh, thank you. Now I'm excited. I'm excited for it. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. I can see it. Definitely. Thank you so much for having me, Sonny.
My pleasure. And please give Roger my love.
He's here. He says hi back.
Right on.
Awesome.
I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Thanks again.
Totally.
And, for our our watchers, our audience, thank you all for being here. Just a reminder that past episodes of Movers and Makers are all viewable on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/lowkeyarts. And please join me on Thursday, March 18th for our next episode number 7, where I'll be joined by my special guest, I'm sure a colleague of yours as well, Laurel, our mutual friend, Lalo Medina will be here.
Oh, yeah. Lalo. Awesome.
Very exciting.
Very cool. And send me a link and I'll post it.
I certainly will.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Laurel.
Thanks, Sonny.
Have a great night.
Big love.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.